Good morning. This morning, I'm just going to take a couple of minutes and maybe reminisce a little bit, but at the same time, talk about how unpopular truth is, how unpopular the simple, straight, and narrow is. You know, we're in a funny world that loves lateral movement, that close enough. But if you go to buy shoes, if you're poor and you're in a third world country and there's a box of shoes delivered, you'll take whatever's close. But you and I want shoes that fit. We want to, I got my collar unbuttoned here, but I want the collar to fit on my shirt. I want it to be the right size. And I certainly want my shoes to fit. I need to have a wide shoe and I need to have I've got a high arch and there's just some things that I would like if I can get them. And I don't want close enough. And if you're a mechanic and you start setting things on the car, you don't want close enough. You want it right. And if you're cooking a meal, making biscuits or cookies and you want some baking soda or baking powder or whatever, you don't want it. Yeah, just throw some in there. No, you want it right. And it's so funny how when we start talking about the things of God, people panic. But just thinking a little bit, again, I've been talking some about our church history, how we got here, and reminding people of things and of people and of circumstances and things that God did that just that were unusual, and people that God brought across our path. And some some I don't feel liberty to share their names. Some I do. Some have moved and they're in other parts of the country, and maybe I don't know if they want to be identified with me. But I know this: I love the people of God. And just today, my wife and I were we stumbled across somebody that we hadn't seen in years, and happened to cross their paths here in the town, and I was so glad to see them. And I don't know where they're going to church. I know that their marriage broke up along the way many years ago, and that's kind of somewhere in there after they left our church and moved or whatever. I don't know all the story, but I just know I love them. And I got to see the wife and one of the kids, and just so good to see my wife hug the lady, and we stood and visited for a while, and that means a lot to me. People matter, and people that have influenced us, and people just matter so very much. And I was thinking about a guy that again, I mentioned Grover Hopper a while back. Nobody knows who Grover Hopper is unless you're family, but Grover Hopper made an impression on our church. And again, a church building the groundwork, the framework of the church, things that establish who we are and what we are, and get our philosophies but I was thinking about Carl and Ruby Edwards. There was a window of time right after, about when we started the church in 1982, in that era that there were people moving out to our area because of affordable housing. They just finished the freeway from San Diego north and from Orange County, LA County east. The 15 hit the 91, and suddenly you could work in Anaheim or Orange County or even LA. We had quite a few people that worked in the LA area, LA airport area, several. And traffic was bad then. It was great compared to now. But so there's a real good church in Bellflower, that a good, solid, independent Baptist church. And we ended up getting quite a few members from there. And these were great people, every one of them, just great people. And I never got to meet the pastor, but I owe him, because these people that attend his church, and in fact, today we still have one man comes to our church off and on he grew up at that church, and he's in his 80s. And I'm guessing 80, 85. I think he's 85. But he grew up at that church, but he lives in this area, and he kept commuting. But when he doesn't feel like making the drive, he'll come to our church, and our church is his second church. He still teaches Sunday school, He still helps, but quite a few people came out, and then that pastor, he was a help more than he knows. Supposedly, if I remember right, people said that if you're in leadership, deacons, staff, Sunday school teachers, and all, he checked your tithe, and if it didn't look like you tithe that week, he called you up and want to know what's going on. And I thought, no way, but they said yes, he did, and he expected if you were going to be in leadership, you needed to walk the walk, walk the talk, and not just talk the talk. And I thought, oh, you folks just come on. I'm going to be easy to follow compared to that. But and I don't think it's wrong he did it. I can't do it. I've never looked at offerings. I've never counted the offerings since the first few weeks when there was no one to do it but my wife and I. But I don't have the checkbook. I don't have the combination of the safe, the key to the door where the safe is locked, and I just keep distant from all that. But every church is different, and then I've always encouraged people, be loyal to your church, and every church can be different. They don't have to be the same. But Carl and Ruby Edwards, they were retired. They moved out to our area, and I believe they came to our church before we met them. But we would have knocked on their door, and there's an area near the church where we would have been knocking on doors, and just a good couple. And Carl, especially, he and I got very close. And he helped me so much. We were getting ready to put up our tent, our first tent, and trying to figure out how to jump through the hoops. Well, I got the okay. I went up to the county and dealt with the headaches and the long story. But the supervisor, the county supervisor, Walt Abrahams, and he may be in heaven by now, but we owe him. He was very good to us, and he was over the whole area. There's a board of supervisors, and he was the one in charge of the board. He was a great guy for many, many years, and he was a huge help to us. But there was a lot of red tape, a lot of things that had to be done. And Carl Edwards he sketched out the tent. I remember all these things he did, running back and forth to Riverside, getting things in. And I'm not good with detail, and I'm not good with all the little detailed jobs. And getting into that first tent, I had no problem driving tent stakes and putting up the poles and stretching the tent and doing the physical labor. But all that detail work, Carl Edwards was such a help. And I remember we had it was a ladies' act. We would do something around Mother's Day for ladies, usually a dinner, or the men would get together, do something fun. Just an activity. The church we just had a church. We had no school. We didn't have any sports programs. We didn't have all these peripheral ministries. We had church. That's all we had. Church and soul winning, bus ministry. And so we would have different activities. Well, we got this idea. And of course, Brother Miller, he thought big. And we were meeting and talking about things. And he said, let's have a King Arthur's theme, a King Arthur's court theme. And we had it at the Miller's home, and oh, that was extravaganza. It was a great night. It was huge, all the details that went into that night, from the bus ride, from how the ladies were greeted at the church, to the bus ride, a completely enclosed bus, the activities in the bus, and on and on. But Carl Edwards and other men, and I'm talking about men, 60, 70, 80-year-old men, got together. They brought sewing machines, and Bud McClellan, he collected antiques. As you walked into his house, you thought you were in a museum. And Bud McClellan, I got a picture of him, and he was well upholstered in the front. We'll just say that. And I got a picture of Bud McClellan laying on the floor, drawing and making a sign. I mean, it's like a bunch of kids. Of course, boys don't grow up. They just get old and get expensive toys. But the men sewed and drew and painted signs and all these things, and then we played the parts of the King Arthur's court, and so many of our men. But Carl Edwards, just one of many men who would be an unsung hero, who just stepped up and said, I see a need, let me help fill that need. And his wife had no problem with him doing it. She didn't hold him back, and she didn't grumble about him being so involved. Of course, she was at everything, but he was at more than everything. And I feel like in America, we forget who we owe. We forget people that have invested in us and helped us, and I don't want us to do that. And I wish we'd done a better job of historian type stuff and writing down and recording things. And I'm not a journal person, but I think it would have been a good thing if I had. But Carl and Ruby Edwards lived in a simple double-wide mobile home in Sedcoat Hills, not far from where our church is now. And they were faithful, and they were there, and they helped. Carl was always an usher, and they were at every service and every activity, and they helped and served. But Carl was this, I don't know what he did for a career, but he was one of these guys who saw a need, and he'd come to me and say, "Preacher, could I help with this?" Or, "Preacher, could I see this needs done, can I take care of it?" And I thought, man, I'd just like to hug you and give me a dozen more just like you. A young, growing church and lots of needs, and the harvest is plenteous, the laborers are few. If I had enough help right now, I could spend more time on the street soul winning, and that may be what I'm best at. I don't know if I'm good at anything special, but I love being on the streets and just visiting and witnessing to people and meeting new people. But anyway, there's been some very special people over the years. I didn't think about Bud McClellan until I started talking, but Bud and Harriet lived in a mobile home park at the north end of the lake, and such a special couple, and loved the Lord and loved our church. And people like that, unknown, nothing spectacular, not any amount of money, but they helped and they gave of themselves. They just did what they could. Well, anyway, I wanted to take a moment or two today, and in Exodus, as Moses was leading the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt, they cross the Red Sea. The Passover happened at midnight. That's when the death angel came. Well, that's easy to remember. It's chapter 12 because it was midnight. So chapter 12, and then they cross over the Red Sea, and they get over into chapter 20 of the book of Exodus, and they're at Mount Sinai. Actually, they're there earlier, but on chapter 20, Moses goes up on the mountains, actually, plural mountains of Sinai, and he meets with God. I kind of think that's where he met God, at the burning bush originally, and maybe not, but I think so. And I might be able to show you that, but it doesn't matter. But that's where he got that's where he got the 10 suggestions. You know how that is. And of course, that's how people look at him. In Exodus 20, God spake in all these words, saying, I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. And he said, I'm the one who saved you. Now, since I saved you, number one, thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven images, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God. Now, you can follow that passage through and get the commandments, but these are absolutes. No statues, no religious statues of any kind. Absolutely not. That's every Buddha. That's every statue of Mary. That's every statue of every saint that any church ever invented as a saint. None do not have any religious relics or statues, period. Forbidden. And don't ever bow down to them. Never bow down. Now, those aren't, you know what, everybody's got their own idea. No, that's basic. That is basic. And don't do it. And every one of those 10 commandments is repeated in the New Testament, except keep the Sabbath. Remember the Sabbath to keep it. Well, that's not in the New Testament. The apostles violated the Sabbath all the time. But, just a couple of thoughts today about this is the things that are not popular, the politically incorrect ideas. And here's the word, absolutes. Absolutes. God is a God of absolutes. Why did Jesus have to die? Because the wages of sin is death, and Jesus is going to pay our sin debt. And if he's going to pay our sin debt, somebody has to die. Simple as that. Because God's not changing that rule. The rule is your sin will only be paid for by blood and death. Not just check. You can't just prick your finger. No, it's not. You can't just cut yourself and be blood brothers. No, somebody's going to die. And the lamb's blood they cut that throat and poured that blood out. And John the Baptist called Jesus the Lamb that was slain from the foundation of the world. Behold, the Lamb of God that taketh away the sins of the world. So these are absolutes. And God is not, and God does all kinds of things. He's merciful, he's gracious, all kinds of things that God does. But understand this, this is an absolute book. You think of Acts chapter 4, verse 12. Neither is there salvation in any other, period. For there is none other name under heaven given among men whereby we must be saved. Only one name saves. People will say, oh, all religions lead to God. No, they don't. They lead to a God. Christianity leads to the God. All the others lead to a God, the God of this world. God is going to take them all to hell with them. But no, there's only one name. All the names are not the same. Different names. You'll hear these cute little slogans. Different names, same God. No, Buddha is not Jesus, and Confucius is not Jesus, and Allah certainly is not Jesus. The Muslim wants to kill every Christian. They've got no use for Christianity, and don't be saying they're the same. There's no way they're the same. And there is one God, only one God, and that's basic in Christianity. And but our world hates absolutes. Our world just hates absolutes. Here's some absolutes. I'm going to just think of some absolutes. Man and woman. In the Garden of Eden, God made a man, and his name was Adam. And then God made a woman, and Adam named her Eve. There's a male and there's a female, and the male and the female are in the garden, and then they had kids. That's what a family is. And a while back, I talked a little bit about the home and the family. Psalm 127. I'm going to read a verse or two, because to me, the family is one of the most amazing blessings on this earth. And Psalm 127, children are a heritage of the Lord. Psalm 127, verse 3, lo, children are a heritage of the Lord. The fruit of the womb is his reward. A home, and every home, sometimes a home can't have children for whatever reason. But the biblical family, the home, the way God set it up, is a man and a woman and babies. And having children is a good thing. They're not a hindrance. They're a hindrance to selfishness. They're a hindrance to your own agenda. And but children are a great blessing. And again, I've got grandkids here in our church, and I love these grandkids. Just not long ago, I got a text from my daughter. If I could read it to you, I would, but I can't. I don't have it in front of me. But it was around my birthday, and the Kimmy, the little 4-year-old, she told her mom, I'm just shivery. And her mom thought she was cold. She said, what do you mean you're cold? You're shivery? She said, no, my heart is shivery because I'm so excited it's Papa's birthday. How do you not enjoy that? Now, if you raise brats, you raise rebels, you raise punks, you raise kids that cause nothing but grief. Oh, okay, I can understand maybe not wanting kids, but train up a child in the way he should go, and kids are a blessing. And so he says, the fruit of the womb is his reward. And he says, his arrows are in the hands of a mighty man. So are the children of the youth. When you're young, get marry the opposite gender, because that's what marriage is, and then have kids, and then train those kids to love and serve God. That is a biblical pattern. And then he says in verse 5, happy is the man that hath his quiver full of them. Now, he didn't define how big a quiver is, but you want to be happy, get married. You and your spouse love God. You and your spouse have some kids. Teach those kids to love God, and fill your quiver with babies and love it. And I've never heard somebody ask me not long ago, so how big is a quiver? I said, I got no idea. You can make your call however you want to make it. But this simple principle of getting married, having children, raising a family for the glory of God, that is biblical Christianity. Just as simple as that. And it's happy Christianity. But this is, if you will listen often, you heard this is from, I mentioned some of these things a while back, but I think it's Psalm 144. He says, rid me and deliver me from the hand of this, verse 11, from the hand of strange children whose mouths speak vanity, and the right hand is a right hand of falsehood. And just get rid of these kids that are a bunch of rebels and self-willed and arrogant and liars. And in order, get rid of the wrong crowd, so that our sons may be as plants grown up in their youth, our daughters may be as cornerstones polished after the similitude of a palace, that our garners may be filled. And then he says in verse 15 of Psalm 144, happy is the people that is in such a place. You get a good marriage, you get good kids, keep separate from the wrong kind of kids, and man, happy. A home ought to be happy. Now, that God has a definition of a home. Over in Hebrews 13, God says this, marriage is honorable. It is the honorable. Shacking up is not honorable. He says marriage is honorable and the bed undefiled, but whoremongers and adulterers will God judge. So God says that there's different types of people. Here's people that are married. Here's people that are whoremongers. Here's people that are married. Here's people that are adulterers. And God will judge the whoremonger and the adulterer. Simple as that. That's just a fact. Now, I don't care what anybody wants to say. You know, we love each other. We just haven't gone to the courthouse and got a driver's license, gotten a marriage license or whatever. But see, these are absolutes. Absolutes. Get married. Get married. You say, well, we've been living together a long time. Get married. Why? Because it pleases God. Because that's what God expects. Well, I don't know if the government's got any right to whatever. All right, leave the government out of it. Come to the pastor's office or the church or whatever. Have a wedding. Have a real wedding. Make a real public commitment. Make your decision. I think being in the country we're in, we ought to do it lawfully. I think you ought to get a marriage license. But look, get married. Get married. Why? Because God is a God of absolutes. It's just simple as that. You know, this silly thing about children. Children are boys or girls. When you get a bunch of friars, we'd get 100 baby chicks at a time, sometimes more. Raise them up 8, 10 weeks, however old, and then butcher them all the same day. Just a big assembly line of boiling water and plucking and gutting and all these things. And people in the city can't even imagine it. But just our family, we didn't do it commercially. Mom, dad, me, sister, grandpa and grandma sometimes, depending on when we did it. But you know what? You let those chickens grow up, they all become hens or they all become roosters. And the roosters don't lay eggs and the chickens don't crow. It's just pretty basic stuff there. And you have a horse, she's a mare or he's a stallion, and you can do some medical altering, and you can have a gilding, you can have a steer or a bull. There's some terminology, and there's a reason for that in the farming and ranching world. But the fact is, you know, just think about this thing. You know, I saw this quote: "Teach your boys to be men before the world teaches them to be women," and that is so true. God, you know, another quote. Somebody said, "It's wrong for your boys to pretend and play cowboys and Indians, but it's okay for a man to pretend he's a woman." That's a sick world, and of course it's stupid and it's wrong. But you know, the world we're in, God gave us children. God gave us boys and girls. And when I grew up, and I'm just saying, we did boy things. We had bows and arrows. Any boy my age or older tell you they always had a bow and arrow at one time, or it might be the first one you got had suction cups on the tip, but it wasn't long before you got some real tips. And my brother and I would pool our money. We'd go buy broadhead hunting tips and I'm talking about 7, 8, 9 years old, 10 years old. And we'd get rosin and melt it and put those hunting tips and try and get them just straight, and they never worked. We didn't have the right tools. But we'd go out in the fields and shoot rabbits and shoot snakes. We came home with a rattlesnake one day that we had shot and broke 2 or 3 arrows getting it because it was among the rocks, and we weren't going to go take the rocks off of it. That'd be stupid. But we did boy things. Every boy had a BB gun. And some boys that had some money, they had BB pistols or they had CO2. We just had the simple old-fashioned Red Ryder, cock it once, pull the trigger, and BBs would be in the barrel. Everybody had you know what? Those are boy things. We played tackle football. We rode bikes without helmets, and we did fall down. Never once hurt my head that I can ever think of. Still got a scar on my shoulder from tearing the skin up, falling down one day without a shirt on. Just maybe I had a shirt on that day. I don't know. We'd ride during the summertime just in cut-off jeans and tennis shoes and no shirt most of the time. And we did look. We were boys, and we drank water out of the hose. And thank God for a mom and dad who let me be a boy. And we'd wrestle and we'd fight and we'd punch. I remember being at one of my friends' houses, and we got out the boxing gloves, and no adults around. We're boxing, no mouthpieces, no headgear, just pounding on each other. Why? Because that's what boys do. And boy things, and we're in a mess. And boys ought to work on things. We worked on our bicycles, and we worked on motorcycles, and we got a couple of old beat up motorcycles, and we worked on them more than we rode them because they didn't run very good, and we didn't know what we were doing as mechanics. But we did boy things. I didn't have sisters. My dad left, and then sometime later my mom remarried, and a stepsister came in. Then we had a girl around, but I don't know what girls did because I was 9 years older than her, and so I was busy. But the fact is, I remember as a boy, we would float down the river on inner tubes. My parents often, and this is young because again my dad left when I was about 10 or so, and so my natural father, before my parents split up, we'd camp at Lake Isabella. Some maybe know that area. It's not too far out of LA, and we'd camp up there. Then we'd go up to the Kern River. Sometimes while we're camping at the lake, we'd go up and they just sit around in the shade and the grass, and parents would sit around and eat and play, visit and talk, and the kids would play along the river. And we would inner tube. We'd walk up the river, throw our tubes in the river, and we'd jump in and we'd float down the rapids, and then we'd get out and go back up. We didn't have life jackets, we didn't have helmets, and we didn't have anybody, no adults to take care of us. And then as I got older, I remember my dad left, and a couple years later, my mom remarries, and we moved up north, 700 miles north, between the city of Redding and the ocean where Humboldt is. There's little mountain communities up through there. We lived in one of those tiny communities called Hayfork. And my friends and I in high school, we were old enough to have cars, or at least to drive, 16 plus. And we'd go over 2 cars to the South Fork of the Trinity River, and we'd go down to one spot and drop a car off. And then we'd take shuttle everybody up to the first spot upriver, and we'd all get the inner tubes out. And it was class 3 rapids, I'm guessing, maybe some class 4. Once in a while there'd be rapids so big, waterfalls big enough we'd get out and walk around. So they're pretty serious. No life jackets, no helmets, and no sense at all. We enjoyed being boys. We hunted, and from when I was 7, 8 years old, hunted rabbits, hunted squirrels, hunted whatever. And then as I got older, hunted deer, hunted quail. Masculine things. Now, back to absolutes. I think we ought to help boys do masculine boy things. And someone might say, well, someone is kind of prone to this. Well, I think there's people prone to liquor. We ought to help them get away from booze. I think there are people that are prone to be slobs, and we ought to help them be more orderly. They're never going to be as orderly as the natural orderly person, but help them be. Look, just because somebody leans a certain way doesn't mean it's right. I think there are people that are more prone to be thieves than others, but we don't okay theft. Well, we do now, up to $950 or whatever. See, there's Bible absolutes. Only one name will save you. And the church, how about the church? You know what? The Bible in the New Testament, every church is named a church. It's not a vine, it's not a twig, it's not a branch, it's not a fellowship. Within the church, you have fellowship among the believers, but the gathering of believers is a church. That's what God called it. It's a church. And you know what? This book is so irritating to people because God didn't ask our opinion. He said, this is what I call it. And he said in Hebrews, forsake not the assembling of yourselves together, as the manner of some is. And he said, so God says, even the first century, there's folks that they just don't bother going to church. He says, don't you be like that. Don't you be like those people who just don't go to church, because there's something about assembling. It's a church. The word church it really means an assembly, a called out assembly of people. It's a gathering place. It's a gathering place of saved people. We should not, in the church, you see nowhere in the Bible where the church is to make unsaved people comfortable. The church is for the believers. Then the believers go out in the world and get people saved, and we bring in new believers. But there's nowhere in the church that the church is to be this place where some unsaved, dope-smoking, beer-drinking person can be comfortable. No. You know what? An unsaved person walks into the house of God where there's 100 or 50 or 500 born-again people with Bibles in their hands. That person's going to feel out of place like I would feel walking into a bar. If I walked into a bar tonight, I would feel so uncomfortable. I wouldn't know what to do, where to sit, how to act. I wouldn't know where you pay. I wouldn't know what to order. And somebody gave us a gift card to a place one time, and it was a restaurant I never heard of, and free meal. We went, and the signs out front, more variety of beer on tap than any restaurant in Southern California or something like that. I thought, oh man, where are we? But it's a free meal. So the person seating us, we sat outside, so we got away from all this, the inside stuff. I wouldn't know what kind of beer to order. You know what? Was I uncomfortable? Yes, and I should be uncomfortable. That's not my crowd. And an unsaved person is going to come to church, and it's going to be awkward for them. Just tell them, look, there's a bunch of church-going folks. You come, hang around, get saved, start reading your Bible. You'll love this crowd. By the way, I got saved, and when I started going to church, I didn't look the part. I didn't know it. I looked at a hymnal. I had no idea what those hymns were. I didn't know where one book of the Bible was over another, and I certainly wasn't dressed appropriate. But you know what? I love church. I was saved, and I loved that book. And we need to understand that there are things that are right. Things, see, absolutes. That's the point today. This world hates you and me having absolutes, but there are absolutes. You know, clear back in Genesis, when Noah got off the ark, God set up capital punishment. If a man takes another man's life, that man's life shall be taken by the hands of men. It was men that are to take the man's life, capital punishment. And it's God who set up war, justified war, sent his people to war, and the reasoning for war. And why is it wrong to murder, but why is it okay for capital punishment? Because there's a reason for both of them. Read the Bible. Simple things. Lady pastors. The Bible says if a man desire the office of a bishop, he desireth a good work. The word bishop being synonymous with the pastor. And then it goes through a long list. Must be the husband of one wife, having children in subjection, not accused of riot and unruly. Goes through a long list of things. Pastor's got to be a man. And I know the world panics over that. No, women's rights and all. No, God didn't say these are the rules until society changes. God said, this is what I want. And you know what I love? I love when we played basketball. A normal basketball court's 45 feet by 90 feet. And in the middle, at the half court, there's a 45-foot line across there. This is one side, that's the other side. There's a key, and at 15 feet, there is a free throw line, and at 10 feet high, there's a basketball hoop, and you don't change the height of the hoop. You don't change how far away the free throw line is. And you can only stay in the key 3 seconds. There's rules, there's lines, there's boundaries. Football's got rules, lines, boundaries, whether it be 8-man touch or 8-man flag tackle or 9 or 12-man, 11-man tackle. Or there's all different rules. You know what? You got to have rules. And God is a God of absolutes. He's a God of order. And he's a God that says this is what it is and this is what it's. You know, the Bible says you ought to be holy. First Peter 1:15 and 16. Be ye holy as I am holy. Simple as that. I'll tell you, don't you be intimidated by the absolutes in the Bible. Embrace them, because absolutes keep us safe. And and I believe in civil government, it's that way. Don't let the government take away your rights. You know, we have something in America the rest of the world doesn't have. It's called a Constitution and a Bill of Rights, and the rest of the world doesn't have that. And we better be careful as Americans. We better be very strong on the absolutes as a nation. Anyway, been politically incorrect enough, offended enough people. I hope you have a great day. Thanks for spending a few minutes together today. Have a great day. Pray, please. Pray for your country. Pray for your church. Pray for your family. And that God would have great mercy on us and bless us.